Hello, everyone. Welcome to Marvel-ous Movie Mondays as Kelsey viciously shifts her chair over. I am Dylan, one of the co-hosts, and the other one is Kelsey. She's on mute. Oh, now she's not. Hey, Kelsey,
No,
how
I'm not.
you doing?
I'm doing good, Dill. Sorry, I just wanted to shift over a little bit because my focal point in the background, I like to be my bookshelf because it has
Mm,
all my Marvel knickknacks on it.
gotcha.
But I'm
Yeah,
doing good.
good. So today we're finally on our last week of the off season. It's been a long off season for this. Since we had Thor: Love and Thunder almost a month ago. It doesn't feel like a long time on paper, but when you're podcasting weekly, it is. So you have to fill the time. But we are doing another Avengers Movie Club where we take three movies from another Avengers filmography. Last week we did Mark Ruffalo, Hulk Represent, in honor of She-Hulk coming out next week. But in honor of Thor: Love and Thunder, which just passed, we are doing Chris Hemsworth because we haven't done it yet, and we're looking at three of his works. We usually start with one earlier, more breakout role. Unfortunately, his breakout role was Thor. So the one right after that was Cabin in the Woods, 2012. And then we have from 2013, I believe, Rush,
Yeah.
the Ron Howard film. And then from 2022, literally just came out a few weeks before Thor: Love and Thunder, Spiderhead, which is also directed by the same director who just did Top Gun Maverick, which is still crushing box office records. So a very relevant film in that sense that I haven't reviewed yet on the channel. So this is a perfect time to talk about it. Before we get into it, Kelsey, did you have any news that you wanted to share?
I did have news today, Dill. I have
Cool.
two pieces of news today. The first I'm going to start is just with some personal news, real
Oh,
quick.
okay.
As Dill knows, it was my birthday on Friday, so
Yes.
I got a really fun gift from my brother. This is for all you Bo Burnham fans out there. He got me an Inside Studios, which looks like Marvel Studios font because
Nice.
at the end of Bo
Yeah.
Burnham's special,
Wait,
it
show it
was
up again. I'm gonna
it
solo lay
was
out
in,
you so you can
here
see.
it is. Oh wait, Chris is blocking it. Um, so at the end of Bo Burnham's special, he released some outtakes from his special Inside, and he does this whole parody of like the MCU Kevin Feige esque
Oh,
announcing
cool.
the next stages of this. He calls it the ICU, the Inside Cinematic Universe, and
Nice,
so he
nice.
does this whole Marvel spoof. And obviously my brother knows I'm a big Bo Burnham fan. I'm a big Marvel fan. It was a match made in heaven. So I just wanted to show off my new T-shirt. But more on
Yeah,
topic of
actual
what we
Marvel. Yeah.
discuss here on this podcast, I did finally get around to watching the two assembled episodes that came out. The one about Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, and which feels like came out so long ago,
I
so
know, right?
long ago.
Yeah.
And the assembled episode about
Miss
Miss
Marvel.
Marvel.
Nice.
So I just
Cool.
wanted to shout out some things that I watched. So from the Doctor Strange assembled episode, I was really drawn to. It was really interesting hearing about the costume designers, specifically
Mm,
about America Chavez and Wanda. So America Chavez in the comics is known for wearing these like really detailed, stylish denim jackets, and the costumer made like an abundance of them. I think he said like around 50. I'm not
wow.
sure, but it was like a lot. He went through a lot of different designs, like of what he wanted to include about, America Chavez's background and her interests and likes and everything. And they're so detailed. And all we really saw in the movie was the little like equality pin that she had going on. But there was
Hmm.
so much more thought and detail went into that jacket. And if you want to know more specifics, she said that they had lines of poetry on them. There's, Day of the Dead references, all that good stuff.
Nice.
So if you want to know more about that, watch the assembled episode because it's so interesting. And also the costume designer talked about the evolution of Wanda's costume and how kind of her using the dark hold has now kind of influenced her look in
Mm,
the MCU, and how, we first saw her in Age of Ultron, and she just very much looked like it looked costumey, but it still could have been her normal clothes, and
Mm,
then in Civil War and Infinity War, it kind of upgrades to a more costumey looking. It's a longer red jacket, has some more flaps, and then she makes her whole transformation into the Scarlet Witch, and now her costume is very comic book accurate.
yeah.
And then now that she's gotten a hold of the Darkhold, it was just looked. They added so much more detail and intricacies to it, and like her crown as well. Like it was just so fascinating to me. And then for the Miss Marvel episode, what I loved hearing about was honestly the set designers. The set designers were the highlight of hearing about the Miss Marvel episode, specifically about what they did to design the Avengers Con, because they just
Mhm,
loaded that set up with so much stuff. There was
mhm.
things that were, smashed by Hulk from the Battle of New York. They had a whole literally like a whole taxi that was just demolished, and they were like, yeah, this was smashed by the Hulk. And
Nice.
they had a little stand that was selling like Asgardian beer and Asgardian themed snacks. They shouted out the Bifrost macaroni, which now I'm super intrigued to what that would entail. So
Might have to
yeah,
add
it
it to
was
our
just
menu for the taste test we're inevitably gonna do. I just said that
yes.
I penciled it in after She-Hulk's done, before whatever's next, like that window, we will do the taste test. I'm gonna make sure of it. Just because you need time to prep for that.
Yeah,
Um,
that's
so
going to
we didn't
require
wanna
a
just
lot of
yeah,
planning.
we
Possibly a
didn't just
video
wanna
that we
wing it.
film together in the same
It
room.
will absolutely be, yeah, because we can't
Awesome.
we unless you wanted me to send an Uber to deliver the food to you from my apartment
Uber
or
Eats.
vice versa. Um, we'll figure out which kitchen suffices better, and then we'll figure it out because we're gonna be cooking these things too. We're not just gonna like, well, we can order shawarma, but like we're not gonna just order ice cream pizza. You can't do that. So you gotta
Oh, no.
you can order the pizza and get the ice cream, but then you have to assemble it yourself.
Right.
Ice cream pizza assembled. But thank you for that, Kels. Like those are really cool tidbits and facts. Yeah, go check out those what are they called? Are they called assembled?
The assembled.
There you go.
It's just called
Full
assembled.
circle. Yeah, go check those out, people. Also, what just dropped? I Am Groot. I know it just dropped, but we were like, when I went to go watch it, I was like, wait, this can't be a whole podcast because there's only 5 shorts and they're all 3 minutes each. So I was like, you know what? Let's make it the beginning of next week's podcast. When we do She-Hulk episode 1, we'll do I Am Groot. Just kind of a recap and review of all those, just because how can you stretch out an hour-long podcast talking about 5 little shorts? Maybe we will, and maybe it'll be the longest podcast we've ever had. Who knows? Um, Maybe Kelsey will have her thoughts. I don't know, but we'll save that for next week because we wanted to talk about Chris Hemsworth today because he is, I believe, an underrated actor. I think he has a very specific type that he plays into, but I think one of these 3 movies especially shows his versatility, and just his whole career has shown his versatility. But like especially in this crop of trio of films that we have, one I think kind of leans more into the Thor type, one pseudo Thor type, but in a more dramatic sense. And then, of course, one that I think just is so couldn't be any more different than Thor. So we're going to be talking about
Mhm.
them once again to recap: Cabin in the Woods 2012, Rush from 2013, and Spiderhead from 2022. Kels, let's start at the very beginning. Not with Star Trek, which was his first role, even though he's in 20
Mm.
minutes of that and he's great in it. But let's start at the Cabin in the Woods. Let's start with some horror. Why don't we? From it had a
Yeah.
festival run in 2011, but it went wide release in theaters in 2012, shortly after Thor. So I don't know if he was filming this simultaneously or if it was he succeeded in Thor and they cast him. But I believe because it came out in festivals 2011 that he had at least started filming this before Thor came out. But like he was kind of emerging on the horizons as like the next up and comer to watch because of Thor. So it'll be fun to talk about him in his early role. It's a smaller role, but an early role. Kelsey, tell us about Cabin in the Woods.
So Cabin in the Woods, like you said, came out in 2012. It was directed by Drew Goddard,
Hmm.
which sounded like a name that I had heard before. So I wanted to look into what other things that he did. And the only other thing that I've actually watched a bunch of things directed by Drew Goddard. That's probably why the name sounds so familiar. But he also did Bad Times at the Il Royale, which is another
Hmm.
movie that Chris Hemsworth is in.
Right.
Um, and I've seen
Yeah.
World War
Well,
Z
I was
for
gonna say, yeah, he
2013.
he started as a writer, so he's only directed 2 movies. It's Cabin in the Woods and Bad Times at the El Royale, but he has written a lot of famous things
Mm,
like Cloverfield, World War Z, The Martian with Matt Damon. He also wrote. He got a start writing on Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Angel. a big popular TV show amongst a lot of friends of the channel, like Chad Webb, his favorite show. One of our Marvel trivia competitors, Chad and Carrie, they love
Mm.
Buffy. And Lost was big for him too, getting his start there. So it's always cool to see like a writer kind of start, on paper and then emerge as a voice more so visually as a director, which is cool. But this was his directorial debut, feature debut, only followed up by Bad Times at the El Royale, which Chris Hemsworth is also in. Both these, he's kind of like a smaller part that is more the supporting of the ensemble. So like we didn't want to go for two of those, so we picked one. But they're
Mm.
both kind of similar in that sense. They're both genre films where he has like a small little appearance and steals the show, if you will. But yeah, Cabin in the Woods, directorial debut, which is also fun because we're looking at something early in Chris Hemsworth's career and something early in Drew Goddard's career. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, he seems to have a lot of connections to the MCU. It says that he was a writer on Daredevil and The Defenders,
Oh, very cool. Very
according to
cool. Yeah.
IMDb. So
Yes,
don't
that,
quote
that
me
is
on
true.
that.
Yes, that is
But
that is that is true.
here's my little synopsis for Cabin in the Woods. When a group of college friends venture to have a weekend in a secluded cabin, they quickly realize that everything is not what it seems. Now,
Because it's a Waverly Place.
okay, Dill, I'll be honest. This is my first time watch for all three of these movies for me.
Oh, okay.
So, which is
I'll tell you right
surprising
now, just
because
to preface, yeah, I'd seen this one, not the other two. So yeah,
okay.
the other two I'm fresh with you, but this one, yeah, I'm interested. Give me your thoughts.
Listen, this movie defied all horror movie logic. Like I feel like it starts off very cliche. It's like you have, the whole shtick of the film is that they're all kind of these like archetypes that we see time and time again in horror movies. There's the
Mhm.
virgin, the sweet, innocent girl, like most likely the final girl that survives. Her promiscuous friend who's more adventurous and she dyed her hair blonde and she's got this jock of a boyfriend who's Chris Hemsworth and he's like, yeah, we're gonna get
Yeah,
laid all weekend.
yeah.
And then they have their comic relief friend, the stoner friend, and then there's like the sweet, Jesse Williams. Hello, Dr. Avery.
I was saving that for you. I was making sure that was a surprise for you, and I'm glad it was because
Oh,
yeah,
no, it
we
was. I
love
was
Grey's
like,
Anatomy on the channel here.
yes.
So
And it starts off like a very like horror film cliche, but the whole twist of it is that this this whole weekend has been planned for them. Like they are just falling into every single trap that this company, whoever they may be, kind of set for them along the way. And the whole point is that they need to sacrifice these I guess like unpure people to these like ancient gods so the
yeah,
gods are satisfied and they don't take over the world. It just takes a
yeah,
like crazy twist that like
mhm,
the audience is in on the whole time, so it
right.
just like makes you so much more nervous for the characters
Mhm.
along the way.
What's interesting is because like in the beginning, it kind of like you said, like we know what's going on, and the fact that like the surveillance aspect, like Bradley Whitford and Richard Jenkins, who two of the greatest like character actors, supporting actors I've seen. Like
Yeah.
Bradley Whitford plays a dick so well. I mean, we saw it as the dad in Get Out. We saw him as the friend in Billy, or the coworker in Billy Madison. Like he is the perfect asshole. And then Richard
Yeah.
Jenkins, he's sometimes the softer dad type, like he's the dad and Step Brothers and stuff like that. But like he has a good, nice edge to him too. And the two of them are great together on screen. And we get like these little clips of them in like this big like kind of office building. We don't really know what's going on, and then it kind of pieces together the fact that they are surveilling them and they are basically sending in the things to kill them, and they're
Mhm.
betting on them and auctioning them off, and it's a really clever idea. But the
Yeah.
gods aspect doesn't come until later, and that's when you truly find out why they're doing this, more so than just pure entertainment, because it is being, I believe, televised, or at least I don't know
I
if it's
was
being
a
televised, but they're all watching it as if it's
n-
television. They're betting on it.
yeah.
They're rooting for it.
Yeah.
It's like a sporting event for them. And you see the other different countries too, and how their experiments are going. And you see that the Americans are very much easier to manipulate and kill off and all that stuff. So it's also kind of a pseudo commentary on America and just society in general, and how brainwashed we are, and all that stuff. It's very smart. It's a very smart satire, very smart. Film in general. It's interesting because I think the twist of the gods is interesting, but the twist of the surveillance, I almost wish we'd gotten it a little later. You know, like
Yes.
I
Yep.
wish it didn't start with the two of them watching them. I wish we had just
Mhm.
kind of seen them in the woods, have the first kill happen, and then reveal that everyone's been watching them and that the kills are manufactured and they're spraying the pheromone spray and mist and all that. Like I
Yeah.
would have liked for that reveal to come a little later, because I feel like when you see the cards early, it's like, all right, I know how they're doing the magic trick. Now I just have to watch it and be impressed. But it's like I want to be surprised myself rather than just know what's going on and watching the characters find out. That's just me, but I don't know. I know people really really love this movie, and I do really like it for the reasons of the premise and the creativity of it all, and the scares themselves. I think that it's got some good scares in it, um,
Yeah.
for sure. Especially with Chris Hemsworth, like that scene in the woods, I think is the scariest scene for me. Just because it's, it's the first kill.
Yeah.
It's terrifying. It's the idea of the darkness and the shadows and the looming and stuff. Like Kelsey, are you a horror person? Because I feel like I don't talk about you to you about horror much, but like, because I scare easily. So
No, Dill, I am a horror person. I get together, me and my two friends, Candace and Jess, we kind of have like a
nice.
horror movie club where we
Oh,
get together as much as we can. It's hard now that I moved, but we get together as much as we can and we just watch all kinds of horror movies.
cool.
So
Yeah.
I was very familiar with this genre and with this setup and where I thought this movie was going to go. And then like it really just like flips everything that you expect out of a horror movie, like
Yeah.
turns it around for you. And if you're a horror fan, it's great because you're like, wow, this is so unexpected. This is so fun. But it's also, I'm realizing now as we're talking about it, it's a very hard movie to explain to people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm like,
Totally. There's
there's
so many ins
ancient
and outs.
gods
Yeah.
and there's people surveilling them and they're betting
Mhm.
and it's not televised for the public, but it's televised for some group of people that are getting entertained by this some way somehow. And it's up to like it oh, I just loved that the fool character, the comic relief, their stoner friend Marty, like ended
Mhm.
up like surviving at the end and it wasn't just like a final girl situation. I was like, oh, this is so different. And then,
Yeah.
she pulls a gun on him at the end and is like, uh, you think like I was like, Dana, no, you're not gonna
Yeah.
kill Marty. Are you dumb?
Yeah,
But
it's interesting because I
it's
think in
crazy.
most horror movies, the first person to die is either the dumb blonde, and that's not me saying it. That's the horror genre saying
Yes.
dumb blonde,
Yeah.
or the stoner friend. So the fact that they're the first two to die, but then he doesn't die is nice. Like
Yeah.
it's a nice little fake out. It's like oh, we're subverting expectations. But then I also think like because they are stereotypes, they're trying to make a commentary on it, but they are still stereotypes at the end of the day. So it's like there are still cliches, and it is a little
Yes.
bit more conventional in its first act, but I think as it goes along, it gets more outside the box, and I appreciate it more. I don't think it's perfectly made. Like I think there's still some tweaks that could be made. I mean, it's very clearly a first movie, but with a first movie,
Sure.
you have some of the inexperience and some little flaws along the way. But with a first movie, you also have a spark that not many other films can capture. It's your first time, so you really want to like make a statement, and that's what I like about first movies. As sloppy or as messy or as flawed as they could be, they always have a similar energy to them in the fact that like this is me presenting my work to the world. And that's what's so exciting to see with this movie is like it very much feels like a director trying to say something new and different, and it's fresh and exciting because of that, I think.
Hmm.
But let's talk really quick. We need to talk about Chris Hemsworth because that's the
Yes.
movie club. And I'll admit when I was rewatching this, I was like, wait, he's not as big of a part as I thought, but he is still in it, and he's still
Yeah.
a focal point, and because he's the only real star in it. Like this was before Jackson Avery went on Broadway, and I had Jesse Williams, sorry, went on Broadway, and like became a little bit of a bigger star. But even then, like
Yeah.
I don't think too many people still like know him by his name, like they do Chris Hemsworth. Like I think Chris Hemsworth, aside from the two guys in the surveillance, watching, and Sigourney
Hmm.
Weaver, of course, at the end, but she's a surprise
Hmm.
too. But I think Chris is the one that people recognize and they know, and that's why his character is so people are attracted to him because, well, physically obviously, but like attracted to his personality and like watching him because he does bring that energy and that star power. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, honestly, Dill, like this is just makes I was watching this and I was like, okay, this makes sense that this is a role that fully like I would expect Chris Hemsworth to play at some point in his
Yeah.
career. Like, he's
Mhm.
proved that he can do so much more than kind of just be this like douchey jock character. But it totally makes sense that this is one of the first like things that he does, because,
Yeah.
that's his type. You look at him and you go, "Oh, he's the douchey jock." And then, with Thor, it's interesting because like I was introduced to Chris Hemsworth through Thor, like you said, and he's just like this regal, like Shakespearean guy, and to see him do this, it was almost like fun to watch him be like just like a regular person. He doesn't
Yeah.
have a cape on.
Yeah.
He's very much in like normal clothes, like in a still like a tragic setting, a horror movie, but
Yeah.
it was still, that he just has this like comfort on
Mhm.
camera. Like, he just like feels like so comfortable just like being, on a set and in front of a camera, that I think, some actors, try to achieve and fail, but he just has this presence that
Right.
you're just drawn to. So it totally
Yeah.
makes sense that, he went on to do great
Yeah.
things.
And I just think it's funny, like his kill. It's very unfortunate, but it is one of the more memorable ones. Like him, with that
Yes.
motorcycle, like because you
Yep.
think you're like maybe he's gonna do it, but again, that's one of those things where the audience knows what's coming. So it's like, does it cheapen the kill a little bit? I don't know. Like I almost wish it sucks because I wish
Oh,
there
I
were
didn't
two.
know that was coming.
Well, but we knew there was like some sort of shield around it,
Yeah,
so when
but
it
I
does come,
forgot.
yeah, yeah. But that's the thing though, is like I wish there were two films, one which was all from their point of view, so they don't know what the fuck is going on, and then one from the surveillance point of view, and almost like you could watch them simultaneously, or you can pick one cut or the other. I think because we get both films, they want to focus on both sides. The reveals don't feel as shocking because we know that there's
Yeah.
stuff going on, shady stuff behind the scenes. So I don't know, like that's why I'm so conflicted about this, because it's such a great idea and it's
Mhm.
so well executed, but I'm also like, but I just wish I was a little bit more in the dark with the characters. I wish I was more in
Yeah.
their mindset than the government mindset, and I think it's a good
Sure.
balance of both, but as a suspense, the suspense is a little weakened because of that, but I still really like this movie. I think it's a fun movie.
Yeah.
It's a good horror movie for people who aren't super into horror or like scare easily, because I don't think the scares are that scary to the point where like you can watch this and still enjoy it more as a film with a
Yeah.
horror lens rather than a horror film. You know what I mean? Like it's not going
And
to scare you out of your seat, and it's not going to linger
yeah.
really with you too long.
Yeah. And it's even like with all the deaths. So like the craziest scene is in Act 3 when, Marty and Dana, the two last survivors of the friend group, are now in the facility. They're getting hunted by this like SWAT team-esque group
Yeah.
of men, all with like
Mhm.
machine guns, all the 9 yards, and they decide to unleash all of the monsters that are being held in the facility. And it's just crazy because even though there's like so much death happening, it's really not that gory because you don't see like a lot. It doesn't get really like super detailed with like what's going on, like, and it's really just like it cuts to like, oh, this person like just got chomped on by like some heinous monster, and then it cuts away, and then you come back and it's just like there's blood all over the floors, all over the walls. So it's definitely a good watch for like a first time horror person if you're really not
Yeah,
into horror, because it's not that,
for sure.
it's like you said, it's not that scary and it's not that gory. It's just
Mhm.
really creative and it
Yeah.
makes you think.
Yeah, for
I'll be
sure.
honest, still at the end of this movie I did write down, did I just watch Eternals? Because it felt very reminiscent of like the Celestials
Yeah.
like breaking open the planets and like emerging uh
Mhm.
from like, the center of the earth or whatever, and
That's
the
funny. Yeah, that
giant
last
hand
shot
at
is
the
so good.
end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's such a good ending because it's like,
Yeah.
"Wait, what?" Because again, it diverts your expectations. You don't get the
Yes.
survivors in this one, which
No.
I like. I like that. So I'm gonna give it just a solid, like, 7 out of 10. Like, I think it has some flaws, but, like, I really enjoy it, and I think it's very
Mm.
creative. Very above average, but not, like, in my top tier horror movies, but I think it's a very solid debut. A good performance for Chris Evans, just a good cast all
Yeah.
along, and Bradley Whitford and Richard Jenkins really just make that movie for me. So, what'd you give it?
I give it a 6.5 out of 10.
Ooh, okay, we're right on the same track. Nice.
So we're
Um,
we're right there.
yeah, we're neck and neck in like a car race, you could say. Let's move on to a car race. Why don't we? Wasn't that a good segue? Let's move on to
Yeah,
2013's
Dill,
Rush.
you're crushing
Ron
it.
Howard. Thank you. Well, a lot of those cars are getting crushed on that track. We'll talk about it in just a bit. But Rush, a racing film from 2013. You can call it a sports film. You can call it a drama. It's a Ron Howard movie. You're going to see a lot of blues and green hues, and some good drama. So, Kelsey, tell us about Rush.
All right. An unlikely friendship forms between two rival race car drivers on their journey to win the Grand Prix.
Nice. It's interesting that you said friendship because like I definitely get the rivalry aspect, but like explain that because
Sure.
I like to think that there's no like the friendship is very seldom seen. I don't know. And
I don't know. I
let's
just
just
feel
remind
like
audiences too, like listeners, that it's Daniel Bruhl is the other person in the rivalry who is
yes.
Baron Zemo. So it's nice to see that Marvel crossover. But anyway, continue.
Absolutely. Dill, I just felt like there was just this unspoken understanding between the two characters,
Mm,
especially like at the end. I didn't really know if this was like a full-on biopic of two real
mhm.
guys, but that's what I gathered from like
Yeah,
the ending when they're showing, shots of them like,
right.
having very civil conversations with one another. And it really just felt like the the rivalry, quote unquote, was really like sensationalized, like for the
Mm,
public, for the cameras, just to create like a level of drama to like keep people watching. Like obviously
mm,
they were competitors. They both
yeah.
wanted to win a race, but I just feel like the underlying, I don't know, maybe friendship is too strong of a word, but I just feel like there was this like camaraderie between the
Yeah.
two.
It's almost like a respect, like a
Yeah.
like by the end, and I don't want to spoil it too much, but I mean, if you're listening to this, you probably watch a movie, or you just watch a movie and then come back. But like, I feel like at the end, it's not necessarily a friendship, but it's more like a we disagree with our methods. I go about things differently, but like I got what I
Mhm.
want in my life, and you got what you want in yours. So like respect.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of the moral of this because I think earlier like they are rivals, they are competitors, but by the end, it's like it becomes more about let me see if I myself can battle my own inner selfishness and ego and stuff, especially with Daniel Bruhl's character deciding at the end to pull over and spare his life rather than risk his life because he knows that there's far more things important than racing, whereas Chris Hemsworth is
Mhm.
like, no, like I want to win, I want to be the champion, and
Mhm.
I want that. And honestly, to me, like I wish there was a better ending to Chris Hemsworth's story. I almost kind of wish he had that growth and transformation. The fact that they
Sure.
end it kind of where he started, where he's still like, oh, I'm the winner, and that's awesome. Like I feel like Daniel Bruhl is the
Mm.
one who like has the full arc. He's the one who
Yeah.
starts off. Yeah, he's very smart. I think he's the rooting interest of the two, just
Mhm.
on first glance. Like obviously Chris Hemsworth has his moments, but and it's Chris Hemsworth, so it's like hard to root against him. But I mean, Daniel Bruhl is
Yeah.
the one who has the logic. He's sensible. He's the one who gets in the accident. You feel for him. He pulls over. You're supposed to feel like he made the right decision. I think he did. Winning is not as important as surviving. And I wish Chris Hemsworth had a little bit more growth. Like, yes, he's not as egotistical. He's not as like forward in that, but also like he still decides to race and he still wins. So it's not like he has anything to like reprimand him
Learn.
for his actions. Like
Yeah.
it's not like he you have to get hit to the ground to get back up, and he never gets hit to the ground. He just is always up. He
You
might be
know, Dill,
stumbling, but he doesn't fall.
yeah, I think that's like honestly a life lesson within itself because I just feel like, I feel like there's just some people in this life that really get everything handed to them and very rarely have to deal with consequences. And it
hmm
just feels like, like you're just waiting for like some people to get their comeuppance, you know what I mean? Like
hmm
and maybe like later on in life, well, the real guy, like, died young, didn't he? He had a
Yeah,
heart
he had a heart
attack.
attack. Yeah. So like I
Yeah.
mean, I guess that could be the film's way of saying that, but they don't try to go about saying like it's because of his lifestyle or because of his, like
No, yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
like I just wish he had more of a fulfilling ending to where like he changed a bit, and I think he did, but like
Sure.
not to the extent that Daniel Bruhl changed, where he was literally willing to give up this career for his life. And again, this is
Yeah.
based on a true story, so that's the events of what happened. But
Yeah.
um, yeah, I don't know. I think this is on surface level, like it's very well made. I think I've been a critic on Ron Howard in terms of like I don't love his style in a lot of things. Like
Mhm.
we talked about A Beautiful Mind on my Picture This Best Picture podcast last month, and I didn't like it because I just felt it was overly Oscar baity, like trying too hard to get the feels
Mm.
from you and trying almost
Sure.
too hard with a premise that on its own just could have existed. And I feel like this is a type of movie that on its own will entertain no matter what because it's about race car driving. So like you don't have to go over the top with its design, and I like how straightforward it was, and I thought it was entertaining because of it. Like I thought it was well made, especially compared to all some of his other films. But I think yeah, like the character arcs. Daniel Bruhl's was, I think, so strong that in
Yeah.
comparison, Chris Hemsworth's wasn't. But again, like I was looking at this as a lens of this is a Chris Hemsworth movie, and I had to look at it more as it's a Daniel Bruhl and Chris Hemsworth movie.
Yeah.
Because Chris Hemsworth, yeah, I don't think he goes through as much growth, but I do think he's good in this role. And this is what I was kind of talking about earlier, how it's like the Thor type in terms of the cockiness and the stoicness and all that, but it's like in a more dramatic context, which is interesting to see because like Cabin in the Woods, very much genre film. The next role we'll talk about very different from Thor, but this one is like I think the most close to Thor in character, but also couldn't be more different in its genre, so it does still stand out, which I like. You know,
Yeah. No, totally. I just
sorry,
wanted to
I caught you
point
in a
out.
yawn.
No, all good. I just wanted to point out you did say that Daniel Bruhl was our only connection to the MCU here, and I'm here to tell you that there's another.
Oh, trivia queen's
The,
coming through. What am I missing? Huh?
the
Oh, are
first
you
girl.
gonna say Olivia Wilde is dating Harry Styles, and that's how her connection?
No,
Okay,
no,
okay,
brother.
okay,
Just
okay.
just you wait.
All right.
So the first girlfriend in the film, the nurse that he has a very
Natalie
short
Dormer.
relation. Natalie Dormer is in Captain America: The First Avenger.
How did I forget
She
that? Wow.
is reading the newspaper and she's like, "Oh my god, so many people would have died if it weren't for you. Let me give you a smooch." And then Peggy catches them and it's like,
So she's in
um,
like one scene of it.
she's literally in one scene and
I
she
did not know that
smooches
because
Steve Rogers.
I'm such a big fan of hers from Game of Thrones. I had no idea she was in the MCU. Wow. Well, look at that.
There
Sorry
you
about
go.
that, people. Natalie Dormer, I apologize. You're beautiful. Marry me. Um, no, yeah, she's
As
great.
soon as I saw her, I was like, Captain America: The First Avenger.
It's almost a
I
similar
think I
thing.
have an illness. I know
She's just
too
kind of like
much.
into the yeah. She like he passes by. He's this hotshot race car driver. They hook up, and that's kind of it.
Yeah. Oh my,
Because
that's like her type. At least
yeah,
in 2011 to
yeah.
2013 it
Not in
was.
Game of Thrones though. She's a bad bitch in Game of Thrones. But
Good,
yeah.
I'm glad.
What are your thoughts though on the movie as a whole? Because I know we talked a little bit more about the ending and Chris Hemsworth character, but like as the movie as a whole, like because honestly, I'm a sports movie guy, but like race car driving, I feel like once you've seen one movie about it, it's hard to differentiate them sometimes for me.
Mm,
Like I feel like there's only so much you can do with a movie about racing.
sure.
I think it's better than Cars. But but please tell me like what are your thoughts on this movie as a whole? Sorry.
How
I
dare
just
you say
I
that
needed to
this movie's
slander
better
Cars
than
a little bit.
Cars?
Sorry. Well, also I gotta mention Daniel Bruhl, the German uh, language voice of Lightning McQueen. So in Germany, when they show Cars on the big screen,
It's
the
Daniel
German
Bruhl?
voice is Daniel Bruhl. So he is the German voice
Wow.
of Lightning McQueen. So again, full circle moment. They're like,
Listen,
you want to do it in live action? We got you, buddy.
I'll be honest still. I didn't really vibe with this movie that much. I
Okay.
don't think that I was the demographic in mind when they made it.
It's a dad movie. It's a dad
It
movie.
feels like a super dad movie. And my dad even loves the band Rush, so maybe he would love this movie.
Have you seen
Um,
Ford versus Ferrari? The one that came out 2 years ago? Okay.
no. Should
It's
I?
interesting because I think you should because I think it's better than this. I think it's got a slicker style, and I think the actual central figures, the characters are better developed. It's Christian Bale and Matt Damon. But what's so interesting to me is that at the very end of this, when they're showing the real life footage, the guy that Chris Hemsworth plays looks just like a blonde Christian Bale. If you go back and look, like he looks like a blonde Christian Bale. So I think it's funny that they didn't have Christian Bale for this, probably because it was around the time he was doing Dark Knight Rises, and he was also gaining a ton of weight for American Hustle. But
Mm,
literally a few years later, he's in Ford versus Ferrari, playing a very similar type to Chris Hemsworth in this.
mm.
Kind of like the risky, like no reservations driver. And I just thought it was so interesting because I'm like, wow, like they could have gotten him for this, but instead they put him in that racing movie, and I think that one's a little bit better. It's the same director as Logan, so it's got a cooler style, I think. But yeah, like I just think that was so interesting. I was like, he looks just like Christian Bale. Why didn't they get Christian Bale? But I'm like, but then if they got Christian Bale for this, he probably wouldn't have done that. Anyway, this is very interesting observation, but yeah.
Honestly, Jill, I'm thinking about it now and I'm like, I feel like if it was just a movie about Daniel Bruhl's character, about having this conflict between doing this very dangerous sport, but still wanting to have a life and survive it and, just like
Hmm.
but giving up on the thing that he loves, and then he gets into the serious accident, and then it's even more of a, oh my
Hmm.
god, do I keep doing this, do I throw my hat back in the ring kind of like conflict. I feel like it honestly might have been a more interesting movie. That's not to knock Chris Hemsworth's
No.
performance at all. I just think that if they were going to do a rivalry, I think they could have gone further with it, but
Mm.
they wanted to stay
Yeah.
true to what it actually was in real
Right.
life.
Well, also,
So I get it.
and along that note, like I have trouble sometimes with people trying to keep it as historically accurate as possible. There are events like Schindler's List, Holocaust. You want to keep that as honest as possible, be out of
Sure.
respect. But something like this, I feel like they could have dramatized the rivalry even more.
Yeah.
Like have them get in like a fist fight at a bar or something. Like have them
Yeah.
like, well, because obviously Daniel Bruhl is much more, calculated and a
Passive.
little soft, yeah, passive. Chris
Yeah.
Hemsworth is the more abrasive one, but it's like I would have liked to see maybe just a few more scenes of them like really getting at it. Like there's that scene obviously where Daniel Bruhl's like, you should cancel the race, and Chris Hemsworth's like, no, you're just trying to do this so you'll win, whatever. Like
Mhm.
maybe make that like give them a scene together afterwards where they can really like get at each other, because I think that's the issue with this is like there's a rivalry, but like you said, like it doesn't get to that extra level to where it's not the most interesting element of the film. The most interesting element is after that crash, seeing Daniel Bruhl struggle with the idea and concept of racing again, and the rain and the
Yeah.
PTSD almost that brings. Like I would have
Yeah.
loved to see that movie. Maybe start it with the crash. Start it with the crash, get to the hospital, then go to some flashbacks of his early career, then cycle back to now that he's back on the race track. Like, what does it feel like? And make it all from his perspective, make it a slick 90 minutes and get out of there. You know what I mean? And have
Yeah.
Chris Hemsworth be one of those other guys that's like kind of like talking it up and like in his face a little bit, but don't make it more about the rivalry, make it more about him. I think it would have been a more interesting film. You're right. That's a great idea. I
Yeah.
pitch it because it's a great idea.
It just like it feels like I don't know, like in rivalry movies, like I feel like there's always this like unlikely bond that happens where it's like, okay, well, you know what? Maybe we're better working as a team. Maybe like it can be like a tit for tat situation. Like I'll help you, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours, and then maybe there's like a betrayal in act 3. Like I just feel like that's kind of the formula that most like competitor sports movies, rivalry movies kind of like
Yeah.
follow. And maybe it's better that they didn't, try to fit into a formula and they were just being truthful to, the real life events. But yeah, it
Mm,
just really didn't hold my attention
fair.
that much. My
Yeah.
favorite scene, I'll tell you, was when I forget his name, but the guy who was kind of like running, I guess, Chris Hemsworth's
Mhm.
character's like whole operation was when he was
Yeah.
telling him that they didn't have sponsors and that the deadline was over. And Chris Hemsworth, I thought that it was like the best, acting that he was doing in the
Yeah.
movie was when he was like having this just like one-on-one scene. There was no like theatrics about it. It was just like this very honest and raw
Yeah.
conversation. And that was when I wrote down a specific word that that just he just embodies this as a human being, and that's confidence. He just has this like confidence with him on camera. Like I just can't get over how like, you know, he's very, like I said before, he's very comfortable, very relaxed. Like he just feels like very at home when you
Mhm.
see him in a movie, and you
Yeah.
just can't help but like really just buy his performance, and it's all very
Yeah.
truthful and it's coming from an honest place.
Yeah.
So he's very overlooked, and through watching these 3 movies, I'm very glad we did this, because even before we did this, I'll be honest, like I was one of those people that was like, Chris Hemsworth, he's a one trick pony. He's, the pretty boy himbo that,
Mm.
is like the douchebag jock,
I was, I was gonna say
there's layers to him though.
if you want the most Chris Hemsworth performance ever, go watch Vacation, the sequel. Well, I guess it's a remake of the original Chevy Chase
Mm.
Vacation with Ed Helms. And I forget who plays his wife in that. I don't know. I'll look at it later. But yeah, like go see that because Chris Hemsworth has a scene stealing, movie stealing role in that, and he plays exactly what the society stereotypes him as. We didn't pick it for this obviously because I think it is too small of a role to make an impact, even though there's something that is not very small that we see of his that is makes an impact on especially our lady viewers, our heterosexual lady viewers of the podcast may enjoy. But yeah, Kelsey's getting excited, but you
Still,
have to wait till after this
why
podcast
didn't
to
we
watch
watch
it.
this movie?
He's a smaller role. He's a smaller role in it, but it's actually very funny. So check it out. But I gave Rush. I also gave it a 7 out of 10 just because I think like it is a solid movie. Like I don't think it's got many flaws in its filmmaking, but I think in its character arcs, its character building, I might honestly bump it down to a 6 after talking about it and realizing some of its flaws more. I might bump it down to a 6, but it's teetering between a 6 and a 7. So let me say a 6.5, kind of what you gave the last one. Kelsey, what would you give this one?
I gave this one a 3.
Okay, yeah,
It's
she
not
is
a bad
well. It's
movie. It
fine.
just wasn't for me.
Yeah,
You
that's fine.
wanted to know Ed Helms' wife in
In
National
Vacation,
Lampoon?
yeah.
Christina Applegate.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay. I knew she was blonde, but I was like, is it Patricia Arquette? No, it's not. Anyway, all right, Christina Applegate. Sorry, Christina.
I'm
it's
sure
it's
she
fine.
forgives you.
Yeah, it's all just cobwebs up here. Cobwebs for spiders. Let's talk about Spiderhead.
Dill,
See,
the transitions today.
yeah,
Something
spider head
else.
webs, cobs in my brain. Spider head.
Yep.
Yeah.
I
Let's talk about
followed.
Spiderhead. It's new. Neither of us had seen it. We saw it this week. It came out last month, so it's very fresh for a lot of people. So if you haven't checked out Spiderhead, we might spoil some things. So go check it out and come back here, or maybe don't check it out. Maybe we're gonna slander it. Let's see. Kelsey, tell us about Spiderhead.
Okay, Spiderhead came out in 2022, directed by Joseph Kosinski, posing as a correctional facility for troubled individuals. Steve Abnesti runs Spiderhead, where he tests experimental drugs on his inmates.
Yeah, I think this is such a cool premise
Okay,
that I
go ahead.
think I don't know if it. I'm kind of just like jumping right into my thoughts. Sorry, like no setup,
No,
but like I think it's such a cool
please.
premise that I don't think delivers as it goes. Like I think it's like it starts
Hmm.
so good, but then like as it went on, I was just like, you know what I mean? Um, I'm interested to hear your thoughts because
Sure.
I don't know how to put my thoughts to words, but like it is still so fresh and there really hasn't been like a critic consensus yet, like on whether or not this is a good or bad movie. Like I literally went into this being like, I don't know if this is good or not. Like I don't know if people like this or not. Like let's just
Oh,
watch it. Especially because it's like the same director as Top Gun, so everyone's been like watching it, but like I don't think anyone's ever told me if it's good or not. So I didn't know what to expect, and I was like, it's a mixed bag. But let me
yeah.
hear your thoughts. Let me hear your thoughts.
So, Dill, my first impression of this movie was actually a review that I saw done by Straw Hat Goofy on
Yeah.
TikTok, who I no longer follow anymore. I'll have you know, because he had some not nice things to say about Taylor Swift. And I take that shit personally. So
Okay.
I no longer
Did
partake
you
in
see
his
the news? Did
content.
you see the news this week that her short film is going to be eligible for Oscar nominations? So if we might see Taylor
Wait,
Swift
I
Oscar
did see that,
nomination
yeah.
or an Oscar winner even though it came out in 2021. So I don't know how that's going to work. It came out in November, so like it should have been qualified for last year's Oscars. But hey, I'm not complaining. But then again, you know,
Listen,
celebrity factor is not always a thing at the Oscars. It's more so a thing at the Golden Globes, which don't have a short category. So we'll see how she does.
right.
But I think that nomination's coming. We'll see though.
I don't know. We'll see. I'm excited. And he did not like this movie. So I kind of went into it. I was like, oh, it's not getting good reviews. I didn't see the Rotten Tomato score until after I watched it, but I was like, oh, a lot of people also don't like this movie.
What is it? Do you know? Is it
Oh,
like?
I think it's a 39.
Oh, okay. Hmm.
I think. Let me.
Yeah. See, the thing with Rotten Tomatoes is so interesting because it's the percentage is based on the amount of critics who gave it a good review. So 39 to me, it does seem low, but like a 33 means 1 out of every 3 critics liked it, which is not good, but it's like I think 1 out of every 3 is still okay, to where, like, if it's anything above a 33, I'm like, "All right, so at least, like, a third of the audiences will like, or a third of
Mm,
people like it." But then, like, if it's a 50, I think that's good. I'm like, half of the people who watch this liked it, and then above 50 to me is,
okay.
like, impressive. So why that's why, like, 39 to me isn't terrible, but, like, it is low considering other movies get, like, 90s and 80s a lot
Yeah.
nowadays.
And the
Um
audience score is 28.
oh,
Um,
okay. People really didn't like this.
s- I I really like this movie. I
Okay,
really
cool.
vibed with it. I like a psychological like look at like
Mhm.
the human psyche
Yeah,
and like
it's
and
very,
it's
very
yeah.
scaled down. Like, it's very like,
Yes.
not basic. I don't wanna say basic because 'cause it's got a lot of good concepts up there, but it's like it's very minimalist in its presentation,
Yes.
which I also really liked. Yeah.
It's yeah, it's very minimalist. I mean, the stakes aren't too high. Um, there's no like serious like action with it. It's not like truly suspenseful. It's just more of like a you know, I don't want to say a slice of life, but it's like, it's just like this. It's hard to describe. I
Yeah.
really liked it.
Yeah.
Um, and as
I
far as Chris Hemsworth goes,
yeah,
I mean,
like, I
this
wanna
is
talk
like,
about him because yeah,
yeah,
he's the best part of it, I think. Yeah.
exactly. Like this is a totally different role that we've haven't seen from him yet.
I I go as far as saying it might be my favorite performance I've seen of his because it is
Yeah.
so different and because I think it allows him to tap into different sides we don't see. The darker, angrier, meaner side at the end, but also like the kind of quirky, like kind of zany side that we don't see either.
Yes.
Like it's very much as far from Thor as possible, and his
Yeah.
accent's really good, which I also have to
Yes.
commend
Yes.
on.
I
Yeah,
agree. Yeah, he was doing an American accent in Cabin in the Woods and it wasn't
yeah,
all that great, but
no.
this one in this movie was pretty
Mhm.
solid. Good for him.
Yeah, and I like how
Yeah.
also he's not the typical, like, nerd type to where, like, because nowadays we're seeing more and more of, like, these big corporate billionaire, like, very brilliant-minded people, but they're not all the same, like, Bill Gatesy glasses nerd type anymore.
Yeah.
Like, it's cool to see, like, this guy who is this muscular jock, and I've heard criticisms that, like, it's not realistic that this guy would be so smart and create such a genius thing, but I'm like, but
Why not?
nowadays, like, we have a lot of people like that. Yeah, exactly. Like, everyone's trying to do something, and it's the idea
Yeah.
that everyone thinks they can do something to change the world, and sometimes they can't, and or sometimes they're harmful about it because they're not empathetic and all that stuff. So I honestly think it's cool to see someone unconventional in that like genius entrepreneur type. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, like you said, Dill, in the beginning, it's a very interesting concept of like having these like kind of drugs, I guess,
Hmm.
or like an app that can kind of just like regulate your emotions at your own will.
Hmm.
And there's like the whole twist at the end, spoiler alert, where it wasn't, all these other drugs that were being tested. It was a drug that made people like obedient that was being tested and he wanted to make sure that regardless of what they asked him to do what he asked them to do they would comply.
Hmm.
And yeah, it's I just thought it's super interesting. I love
Hmm.
like in-depth look at society almost and the human
No,
psyche and psychology and all that good stuff.
it's interesting because, like I said earlier, like I think it derails only because as it went on, like the premise is so strong, but I think it went on to a predictable route. Like I knew he was going to be the one in charge. Like I knew there was some more sinister side to Chris Hemsworth's character. Like I knew that was
Sure.
coming. I knew there would be a way that they tried to rebel. I knew it would end with Miles Teller and this girl escaping. Like I knew that was coming.
Okay.
I think just because that's kind of what it sets it up for. But also at the end, I was thinking like, what is this movie exactly trying to say? Because I know it's trying to
Okay.
comment on like like big tech companies and harmful medicines and stuff like that. But like, I don't know exactly because also I don't know if it's trying to be seen from the lens of Miles Teller's character or Chris Hemsworth's, and I think it's trying to be from Miles Teller's perspective. But at the same time, like is it trying to say something about imprisonment and that aspect and like
Mm,
like people shouldn't be sent to jail for accidents, but then again he was a drunk driving, I believe, so like is it
yeah.
to say that he should be forgiven? Like I didn't know what I was supposed to take away from it. I think that's the problem, is like it's such a good concept but I don't know what the concept wanted to teach its audience. You know what I mean?
Sure.
I'm struggling. Like, do you have an idea? Because like I just am trying to think of like what was the point, and I know the point is to entertain, and that's like the very base level, but like I just was trying to think of that like next level, deeper layer, but I just don't know yet like what it was trying to convey,
Yeah.
other than it's bad to trust big billionaire like smart people. I don't know. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah, Dill, I was really taking it as like kind of almost like a warning of like
Mm,
if technology does advance to the point where we can just press a button and no longer feel sad, or
mhm,
if we want to feel like, it was just, it's very much like about like kind of altering our kind of brain chemistry, and giving us like shots of serotonin. It was almost like commenting almost also on like drug addicts and like drug addiction at the same time as well,
mm,
because it's like when drug addicts get to a certain point where their drug of choice isn't even doing it for them anymore, because that like portion of their brain is now shot, because they've done it so much, they advance to like the next thing. And it just like made me think of
mm,
like, it really did feel like a warning to me of like not only about like drugs, but like technology specifically, and what happens if like these billion-dollar, you know multi-million dollar companies that we all like put money into and trust and use their products, what happens when they get too much control and they start offering us things like an
mm,
obedient drug that will just make
right.
us do and say whatever they want. And
Yeah.
so that's what I got from the movie, at least.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that's a good idea. But like also I wish then I think it's the fact that they're like making it about these prison inmates, and like you have this option to either go to like real prison or like go to this testing thing, and like your
Sure.
your sentence is basically you have to endure this. But then like wouldn't they kind of know then that like if they were testing something as an alternate to real prison, that they'd probably be in for something bad, like that it wouldn't be a good thing, because like they're not going to reward you for getting arrested. And that was the part also, like just
Right.
making it that we're following two prisoners. And then they also drop the truth on why Journey Smollett's character is there, and she kind of reveals why she's actually there. And I
Yeah.
wish they had almost kind of went further in explaining why we should either empathize with her or why she shouldn't be like commended for what she did, because like they don't really say whether it was really malicious intent or just negligence in how she got to arrested and got to jail. But it's also like
Yeah.
like I wish there was a little bit more on that, or if they were going to really try to make us like see it completely from Miles Teller's perspective, like don't make it about a prisoner, make it about someone who like maybe voluntarily signs up for this thing and gets tricked, and how he has to go about it. Like I think of the show
Mm.
Severance on Apple TV Plus, which I'm not going to
Mm.
spoil because it's incredible, but I just
Yeah.
saw it recently for the first time, and that it's honestly similar. It's a similar vibe. It's about a guy who went through a really tragic event in his life, and there's this opportunity to basically sever your brain when you're at work, to where when you go down the elevator to work, everything in your real life, you lose all memory, so you don't know what your person on the outside of work does, and then when you're outside you don't know what you do when you're at work. And that can be very dangerous, because
Oh.
then you start to see how they take control of the people at work, and you start to see how it kind of messes with your brain and your psyche, and what happens when you do know the truth on the outside and all that stuff. But like I think that had a better way of going about a similar premise, because it was about this guy who was hurting because of his loss that he had in his life, and he went through this process as a way to heal, and then it turned out to be not like he seemed. Whereas here it's
Yeah.
like we're supposed to feel for this guy, but at the same time like he was drunk driving, and he did
Mm.
you know get himself into this situation, and this was like a way of doing an alternate sentence. But it's like, am I supposed to root for him? Yes, because that's what the movie's telling me, but also like I wish there was more of a justification for why we really should care about these people, and why this experiment had to be done with prisoners and stuff. Like honestly, if you remove the prisoner aspect and give it a more enticing way about how Miles Teller got roped into all this, I think it might have been a little stronger. But I do think
Mm.
it's such a good idea, and it looks slick. Like Joseph Kaczynski's really good at making things look good. Like Top Gun, I think it's the best looking movie, blockbuster in a long time. And I think this is one of those things. And I'm very critical on this podcast about visuals and visual effects and aesthetics, and
Yep.
sometimes less is more. This is one of those cases. And Netflix pours so much money into these movies, but this one, I think the money was well spent, because I think it looks good. Camera work, cinematography, production design. It's a really cool looking movie. And so I think its ideas are really good. It's just some of the way its ideas are conveyed and the way it kind of resolves didn't necessarily work for me all the time. But I do like this movie more than I thought I would.
Mm.
So my score might not reflect that, but I did like this. So Kelso, what did any other words?
And even from, like, an actor's perspective, like, watching this
Mm,
movie, I was like, how much fun would it have been to just, like, flip a switch and now all of a sudden you're acting like the
true.
person sitting across from you is like, you're so turned on by them. And then,
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
you have another moment where, like, you find everything hilarious regardless of how awful,
Yeah.
like, what people are telling you is. And it was like that moment at the end where I really have to commend Chris Hemsworth where he is, he's in
Kind
the
of glitching
plane,
out
he's
almost. Yeah.
he's flying away, and like his chemicals are all off, everything's malfunctioning, and he's just going switching back between all these emotions and mental states, and he ends up crash landing into a
Mhm.
mountain. And
And
I
Spiderhead, 8 different things going on in your head, different, 8 legs. That's what I took
yeah,
away from
yeah,
it. It's like
yeah.
it's like 8
Oh,
legs all at odds with each other in his head. Like, I was
yeah,
like, "Oh,
yeah,
it's just
yeah.
Spiderhead, it's cobwebs," and yeah, I don't know. Yeah,
Yeah,
like, that ending is good too, yeah.
yeah, I thought it, I don't want to say a fun watch, but from an
Well,
actor's perspective,
yeah,
it
it
was a
is
fun
fun, and
watch.
it is fun to watch these actors because also Miles Teller, we didn't mention a Marvel actor, pseudo Marvel actor. He's in Fantastic Four. It's not
Oh,
MCU,
yes.
but Marvel.
Yep,
And
yep,
then
yep.
Journey Smollett, who's DC. She's Birds of Prey. But like, I really think
Mhm.
this is a really interesting acting experiment. Yeah, like I think Chris Hemsworth makes this movie for me because I think the premise is a solid premise that doesn't necessarily stick the landing, but he is so good that I'd watch this again for his performance because I really
Mhm.
think he brings such an interesting direction to this character where you could have the very smart, conniving, glasses, snooty, almost like Sam Rockwell, Justin Hammer type in this role. You could,
Yeah. Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah.
the fact that it is Chris Hemsworth, and that's why people are drawn to this, is because he's charming and he's able to lull you in. He's able to win you over.
Yes.
The scene where they're kind of getting high, sharing their, their sorrowful stories, but because they're
Yeah.
heightened, they're laughing about it. Like that is
Yeah.
so interesting to me, and I love how he plays that. And I think this character is really good. I almost want to see like maybe a prequel, almost like of how this character got to where he is, and like, is he really this much of a genius, or is he just like this rich guy who's lost and doesn't know what the hell he's doing. I think it's very exciting, of a good performance, and I'm so excited I saw it because of that. Because I think this is, if you want the most 180 from Thor, this is it. And I think
Yeah.
if I'm gonna recommend any of these movies, this is the last one I'm gonna recommend. But if I'm gonna recommend a performance, this is the first one I'm gonna recommend. So that's very
Yeah.
interesting. So because of
No,
that,
yeah.
I settled on like a 5 out of 10, like right in the middle. Like
Okay.
I think it's average. Like 5 out of 10 for me is average, and that's like where I'm at. Like it's right in the middle, solid, but like has flaws. But I think the pros are very strong as well, so it
Yeah.
kind of balances out. I don't know.
Dill, I gave this movie a 6 out of 10.
Nice, very very cool. Yeah, so we're right on almost on the same page. Yeah.
Yeah. Same page, different paragraphs.
You're on the last paragraph. I'm on the first one. I'm still struggling to get to the end of the page, but we're on the same page. But yeah, Kelsey, if you had to recommend one of these movies, period, it sounds like Cabin in the Woods was your highest rated. But like, if you had to
Yeah.
recommend a movie for Chris Hemsworth fans who are saying, "Hey, I want to see another movie with this Thor guy," what do you recommend? What would you
I'm
say?
recommending Spiderhead.
I think
I'm
I
like,
am
you're
too.
gonna want to
Yep.
see him.
Mm-hmm.
He just makes being evil seem so effortless in
Mm-hmm.
this
Which is
movie.
so cool to see from a villain. 100%.
Yeah,
Cool.
absolutely. So that's the one
Nice.
I would definitely recommend.
Cool. So that is our Chris Hemsworth movie club. We've gotten 5 of the main 6 Avengers done. We got one left, and maybe in our next off season we'll have to hit Jeremy Renner. Not hit him, but like
No,
do his
we're
movie
not
club.
violent on this podcast.
But yeah, you can go back and watch our Robert Downey Jr., our Scarlett Johansson, our Chris Evans, our Chris Hemsworth here, and Mark Ruffalo's. We finished all 5 of them. We also got Captain Marvel, Spider-Man, Black Panther. Like we're getting through these pretty quick. And I want to even do maybe down the line like a director movie club. Like look at some other Taikas, look at some Chloe Zhao's. Even though Chloe Zhao has only made 3 films, I believe. So we'll have to wait till she makes another one. But because Eternals can't count. But yeah,
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
I think it's fun to look at these actors' filmographies separate and see how they've evolved since and how they started before. This one is all since. It's interesting because all of these took place after Thor, and I don't think we've had a
Mhm.
movie club yet where we started after the breakout, at the MCU breakout. So that's very exciting. Next week we are going to be talking about She-Hulk. Episode 1, it's coming on
Mhm.
Thursday, and we'll be talking about it on Monday. And we're also going to be recapping I Am Groot, all 5 episodes, all 15 minutes. They are cute though; they are so cute, and I can't wait to talk about it. And we'll also talk about where it fits in the timeline because it's very fun to like kind of piece it together. Like, where is this? Where is this?
Mhm.
Where is this? I was doing that a lot. I was like, which this? So this is before Guardians 2. This is after. It's very interesting. This is during. Yeah, so it's very
Yeah.
fun. So yeah, go watch I Am Groot. It takes 15 minutes of your time. Go watch it for the next week so you can join our discussion of it. Watch She-Hulk episode 1 so you can join our discussion of it. Very interested to see what I think because the trailers have not hooked me. So I'm so excited to see if I'm proven wrong, and seeing what happens
Wow.
with this guy, my favorite, Mr. Hulk. Because going into this year, it was Wanda and Hulk were like my 2 favorites, and now I think because
Mhm.
of Multiverse of Madness, Hulk's pulling ahead a little, I think. So
Oh,
yeah,
interesting,
I
Dill.
mean, hey, I had some flaws with the characterizations in Multiverse of Madness at points,
Sure.
um, but yeah, like they're neck and neck, and maybe Hulk is gonna tank in this one too. Who knows? I don't even know who my number 3 is. Maybe Sam Wilson. I don't know. But Kelsey, where can they find you?
You can find me on Instagram at Kelsey A. Kilpatrick. You can follow me on TikTok, Cause13, or you can subscribe to my YouTube channel, Cause Productions.
Yeah. You can follow me at Dylan_Randazzo on Twitter and Letterbox. I'm posting Letterbox reviews. I'm trying to do catch ups for some movies because I haven't logged it in a week and a half, which for me is a long time. It's a lot of movies. Dylan Randazzo 417 at TikTok and Dill Pickle Movie Network if you're listening to us on podcasts. Thank you. Give us a review, subscribe, send to your friends. Head over to the YouTube channel, subscribe there because we want visibility and monetization in both, and we're trying to strive toward that. We've got some exciting stuff in the future, including, as we said, She-Hulk reviews. We're going to do a taste test eventually. And we're going to have some Marvel trivia for you. We have a number 1 contender match coming up soon with Noah, and then the winner of either Malcolm or JD. Malcolm and JD are going to be facing off this month to see who's going to play Noah in a future month to see who's going to play Kelsey at the end of the year in December. So it's going to be very interesting. Kelsey will have gone a whole 12 months without competing, but she's competing in December, and it's going to be against either
Rusty.
Noah. It's going to be against either Noah, Malcolm, or JD. So it's going to be very exciting, and I cannot wait to see who she ends up playing. But there are also number 1 contenders brewing underneath the surface too. Stacy might have a shot soon. Corey and Matt might have a shot soon. Zach might have a shot soon. Chris, they all have some wins. They're all seeking her out too. So at the start of January to kick off our season 3, there's going to be another belt match, and it's going to be against someone. And Kelsey's going to have to, if she wins the December match, is going to have to play another one in January. So it's going to be very exciting to see who is going to end up facing her in those months. But I'm very excited nonetheless. So check us out there. Check us out here. You're already here, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye.